Emily sat at the corner of a busy café, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup as though it could anchor her racing thoughts. The scent of roasted beans and the murmur of voices should have felt comforting, but her heart wasn't at ease. She had come here to steal a quiet moment for herself, away from the chaos of rebuilding her life after a painful divorce. But just as she lifted her cup, the door opened and in walked the one person she least wanted to see, her ex-husband. His presence was like a sudden storm, pulling her back to the years of hurt and disappointment she had worked so hard to leave behind. Her chest tightened, panic rising as his eyes scanned the café. She could almost feel the weight of his gaze searching for her, threatening to unravel the fragile piece she had begun to piece together. Emily knew she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for the awkward conversation, the small talk that would slice open old wounds, or the possibility of him noticing the vulnerability she still carried. Her pulse quickened. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair, scanning the crowded room for an escape. But the café was packed, and the only way out meant walking right past him. Her breath caught as his eyes began to shift toward her side of the room. In that instant, she acted on instinct, driven purely by the fear of confrontation. She spotted a man sitting alone by the window, his expression calm and unassuming, as though the world around him didn't disturb his peace. Without a second thought, Emily hurried toward him, her footsteps unsteady but determined. And before she could second-guess herself, she leaned in, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered desperately, "Please, just play along." Emily's arms trembled as she clung to the stranger, her voice barely audible as she pleaded for him to play along. For a heartbeat, she feared he might push her away or expose her desperation. But instead, she felt his arms fold around her with quiet assurance, steady and natural, as though this embrace had been waiting for her all along. His warmth calmed the storm raging inside her chest, and for a brief moment, the café and the panic dissolved into silence. To the outside world, they looked like two lovers reunited after a long absence. Customers glanced over, some smiling softly at the tender scene, while others returned to their conversations without a second thought. Her ex-husband hesitated near the counter, confusion flickering in his eyes, before he turned and walked out, dismissing the moment as none of his concern. Relief washed over Emily, but it was quickly replaced by embarrassment. She pulled back as her cheeks flushed crimson, her words tumbling out in a rush of apology. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I shouldn't have." The man interrupted her gently, his eyes kind and steady. "Don't worry," he said, his voice warm with a calm sincerity that felt strangely familiar. "We all need rescuing sometimes." His words wrapped around her like a second embrace, reminding her that kindness still existed in unexpected places. Emily lowered her gaze, still unsettled by her own boldness, but a small, reluctant smile tugged at her lips. She hadn't meant to involve a stranger in her troubles, yet in that fleeting, unexpected hug, she had found more comfort than she'd felt in years. Something about him, his calm, his acceptance, made her wonder if this encounter was more than just chance. Emily hesitated at first, unsure if she should stay, but the stranger's gentle presence invited her to sit. What began as awkward small talk soon unfolded into something deeper. She found herself sharing pieces of her life she rarely voiced aloud, the long nights spent worrying about bills, the fear of failing her young daughter, the weight of starting over from nothing after her marriage had crumbled. Her words trembled with honesty, but he never once interrupted or looked away. He listened, truly listened, with an attentiveness that felt like a balm to her tired soul. He didn't offer advice or pity. Instead, he asked questions that showed he cared, questions that made her feel seen rather than judged. His eyes carried a softness that steadied her, and for the first time in years, Emily felt the relief of speaking without fear of being misunderstood. She studied him between sentences, his plain shirt, the worn watch on his wrist, the unassuming calm about him. He looked like any ordinary man who might have walked into the café seeking nothing more than a quiet afternoon. Never once did she imagine he was anyone of importance beyond this moment, nor did she suspect the world he truly came from. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, weaving from hardships into lighter moments. Emily laughed at his dry humor, surprised by how natural it felt. The sound of her own laughter startled her. She hadn't heard it like this in so long, unburdened, genuine. With him, time seemed to soften, stretching into something she wished she could hold on to. As she looked at him, still smiling, Emily realized she was experiencing a rare and precious thing, the comfort of connection, with a stranger who somehow felt like a safe place she had been searching for all along. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Emily gathered her things, feeling lighter than she had in months. She thanked the stranger for his kindness, ready to part ways and carry the warmth of their encounter back into her life. But just as they stepped outside, a sleek black car glided to the curb. Within seconds, two well-dressed assistants hurried forward, opening doors and addressing the man with deference that made Emily pause. Her heart stumbled as realization dawned. The quiet, unassuming stranger she had hugged in desperation was not just any man. He was Alexander Ward, the billionaire philanthropist whose face she'd seen in magazines and news articles. Her breath caught in her throat. The man who had listened to her struggles with such simple compassion was someone the world admired, someone whose name carried power and influence far beyond her imagination. Shock rooted her in place. Embarrassment washed over her, followed swiftly by fear. What if he thought she had known all along? What if he assumed her honesty was nothing but a performance to gain his attention? She opened her mouth to explain, to distance herself, but no words came. Alexander noticed the change in her eyes and offered a gentle smile, calm as ever. "You've figured it out," he said softly, not as a boast, but as a truth. Emily swallowed hard, lowering her gaze, but he continued before she could retreat. "I don't care what you know about me," he said, his voice steady with quiet conviction. "I care about how you saw me before you knew." The word struck her deeper than she expected, dissolving the fear that had risen inside. In that moment, she realized that beneath the wealth and titles, he was simply the man who had hugged her back when she needed saving most. The cool evening air wrapped around them as Emily stood by the café entrance, still reeling from everything she had learned. Alexander's presence, even without the wealth and prestige that surrounded him, felt grounding in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She shifted nervously, unsure how to say goodbye, unsure if she should thank him once more or simply disappear before the moment became too big, too unreal. But Alexander stepped closer, his voice gentle, carrying a weight that felt almost timeless. "Sometimes strangers meet at the exact moment they're meant to," he said, his eyes steady on hers. The words lingered in the air, sinking deep into her heart. Emily felt something stir inside her, something she had long thought buried under years of hurt and disappointment, a fragile but undeniable spark of hope. She nodded, unable to fully voice the gratitude swelling in her chest. For so long she had believed her story was one of endings, of loss and survival. Yet here, in the most unexpected way, she had been reminded that life could still surprise her, that kindness could appear without warning and turn fear into connection. As she walked away, her steps were lighter than they had been in years. She wasn't thinking about Alexander's fortune or fame. She was thinking about the man who had embraced her when she needed it most, who had seen her without judgment, and who had offered her the possibility of trust again. A single hug, born from desperation, had opened a door she never knew was still waiting for her. And though the future remained unwritten, Emily carried with her a renewed belief: sometimes the smallest acts of humanity can become the beginning of something extraordinary, even love. Emily's story is not just about chance, it's about the way life has a mysterious way of giving us what we need when we least expect it. What began as a desperate attempt to hide from her past turned into a moment of unexpected grace. A hug meant only as protection became the bridge to healing, trust, and possibility. In Alexander, she didn't just find a powerful man, she discovered compassion wrapped in humility, a reminder that true worth lies not in wealth, but in kindness. And in Emily, Alexander saw someone who looked past his title, someone who saw the human being beneath the fortune. Together, their encounter reminds us all of something universal, that hope can return when we believe it's gone, that strangers can become lifelines, and that a single act of courage, born from fear or desperation, can transform the course of a life. This was never just about avoiding an ex-husband or meeting a billionaire. It was about rediscovering the beauty of human connection, the miracle of kindness, and the truth that sometimes the moments we stumble into unexpectedly are the ones that change us forever.